If you wear plate, gaining 1 armor at 10,000 armor versus at 17,000 armor has basically the same effect. Yes, that's right. Diminishing returns don't really exist on armor unless you're talking about very low values like clothies. Let's explore this idea. Here's the formula for damage reduction from armor. We have the reduction percentage is equal to your armor value divided by your armor value plus 400 plus 85 times the level of whatever's attacking you. This value for R, the percent damage reduction, it's capped at 75%, which is achieved at 17,265 armor. If you ever check somebody's logs and it says that they have more mitigation than 75%, this is due to other damage reducing effects being active, such as D-stance or the usage of a shield wall type ability during the fight. Anyways, let's convince ourselves that it makes sense that armor would have a rather constant value for plate wearers. Let's set the formula up for a level 63. This decision is arbitrary. You could use any monster level. Now the formula is R is equal to armor divided by armor plus 5,755. Let's check how much reduction we get from 100 armor at 50% reduction and 100 armor at just under 75% reduction. For 50%, we do this equation. We have the reduction is equal to 5,755 plus 100 divided by 5,755 plus 100 plus 5,755. I know that's a mouthful. I wrote it like that way so it's easier to understand. Of course, at 50%, you're going to have the top be equal to double the bottom. So if there's this magic number that's 5755, you set A, armor equal to that, and you put an extra 100 on it. This leaves us with R being equal to 50.43% reduction, which means we gained 0.43% reduction from that 100 armor. But how much would you gain if you got 100 armor at just under the armor cap? Okay, so we'll take the armor cap, 17,265. We subtract 100 from it. That's going to be our starting point. So now our formula is equal to R is equal to 17,265 minus 100 divided by 17,265 minus 100 plus the magic number again, 5,755. Same deal as before. I wrote it with the armor cap minus 100 just so that way it's a little more clear what we're doing. Anyways, this equals out to 74.9% reduction. That means 100 armor right before the cap only gave us 0.1% more reduction. So did I lie to you? Am I a crisis actor now? We have one more concept to cover and then you're gonna believe me. Imagine you have 99% damage reduction. I swing at you with a weapon for 100 damage. It's gonna hit you for 1 damage. Let's say you gained 1% more reduction. Would you take 0.99 damage instead of 1? No, you'd become immortal. You'd have 100% damage reduction. This is why every game has a diminishing return system on armor, because otherwise it naturally has a very explosive growth rate. In the case of World of Warcraft, the way that they put the DR in is just by making the armor formula have the armor term on the top and the bottom of that division line, or whatever the hell you call that thing. I don't know what it's called. Let's do one more example so it definitely sinks in. Let's say you have 98% reduction. I swing at you for 100 damage. You, of course, take 2 damage. A magic fairy then comes into the room and gives you 1% more reduction. Now you have 99%. I swing for 100 a second time, but I hit you for 1 now. Wow, that 1% reduction made you take 50% less damage. Another way to look at this is a 1% damage reduction when you have 0 armor is obviously just a 1% reduction. But if you were at 75% mitigation and you could go to 76%, that would be worth 4 times as much as that 1% difference would be at 0 armor. Now remember, these are 2 separate things. One of them is just how percent modifiers that reduce damage have this natural explosive growth rate in the value of a percent more reduction, and the other thing is the actual formula for armor, which attempts to deal with this by putting in a diminishing return by having the armor term be on the top and the bottom of the division line. These two systems put together is an attempt by the developers to give armor a relatively constant value, except if your armor's really, really low, then you get a lot more value per point of armor. But for anybody in plate, it's not like there are some plate users who are getting double the value out of armor as other plate users. That's not a thing. But I'll give you some examples so that way you can believe me. But just a quick recap, 1% armor at armor cap is worth 4 times as much as it is at 0 armor, and 1% at 99% reduction is worth infinity. It makes you immortal, and 1% at 98% reduction is worth 50 times more than 1% at 0. So let's see, how about we have a little example / story that can show how you could use this knowledge but also prove that the DR doesn't really matter. Let's imagine that you're a main tank. You have about 10,000 HP and 10,000 armor. Both of these are sensible values. If you use armor consumes and no shield, you're going to have 10k armor as a warrior, no problem in Classic. And I'm sure you've seen people with 10k HP many times in Raid, so that goes without saying. Let's say you want to make yourself as tanky as possible, and so you want to determine the trade-off for armor to health. What's a good deal? Now here's a rule of thumb, and we're going to prove it. 1 health is equal to about 1 armor if you're a warrior that's taking all their consumes seriously. So, you have 10k armor, and you got 10k health. Let's get into the math. 10k armor gives about 63.5% damage reduction, so currently the effective HP of this character would be equal to 10,000 health divided by 1 minus 0.635, which is equal to 27,400. Let's think about that idea before that 1 health is about equal to 1 armor. If we take away 1k armor and give him 1k health, what is the effective HP? If it's near 27,400, then we've proven it with this example. 9k armor would give us 61% mitigation, so we'll do the 11k health divided by 1 minus 0.61. This equals to 28,200. So I was a little off. What about if we gave 1k armor and took away 1k health instead? 11k armor would give us about 65.65% reduction. Let's find out what the effective HP is. We do 9,000 health divided by 1 minus 0.6565. That's what our effective HP is, and that totals out to 26,200. Now, that might sound like a big difference. We got 26k effective HP when we reduced our HP. That means that HP beats armor. We got 28k when we increased the HP and reduced the armor. And when you have them both at 10,000, we had 27,000. But I want you to realize that the peak-to-peak difference here is 26k and 28k, so 2,000 health. But we started out with 27k effective HP, so it's like 2,000 out of 27,000. It's less than a 10% difference in value, basically. TLDR, armor is a lot better than most people think. Use armor pots and elixirs for the love of God, or you're griefing your raid.